Hi, Penny. So good to have you here for the third, well, our second actually, if we do by the numbers, progressive soul dialogue. I want to talk to you today about intuition, or some call it gut feeling. And I want to talk about how we learn to listen to ourselves and what our mind and body are telling us. Well, actually, not mind, perhaps soul would be a better choice of words. So let's get it going.
Okay, well, so as usual, all these small sort of questions are bigger kinds of answers, but trying to boil it down, especially if there's anyone listening that's a bit new to all of this sort of thing, or on their embarking on their spiritual journey to understand things. Intuition, or what people call intuition, comes with a lot of different names, like you just mentioned, gut instinct. I mean, I worked in a corporate world with a lot of men, and they would always say, my gut tells me, and I'd be thinking, yeah, that's your intuition. So we've got the lady word and the masculine word, so or the feminine and the masculine there. But there's also mother's intuition. There's, I feel it in my waters. There's, oh, I can just feel something. I'm not sure what it is, but I just know. And so there's lots of different types of catchphrases and terminologies that we all have for instinct and intuition. And I think that in a nutshell, everybody on the planet has a intuitive ability, which is psychic. So ultimately, intuition is a psychic ability, gut instinct is a psychic ability, and in spiritual terms, intuition and gut instinct is clairsentience, and that's just the French fancy word for clear feeling. And, you know, your solar plexus are just above your gut, so to speak. So are they all coincidences, or is there something more to it? Anyway, that's the history lesson over. And I think that everybody has a natural intuitive ability or psychic ability, but it depends on how naturally inherent it is in you. So definitely there are some people that have this ability naturally stronger than others. A lot of children, you might notice, tend to be very intuitive, and they go by how they feel. They go by their interaction when they meet people. So if you can think back to when you were a child and you couldn't verbally express yourself, you might look at somebody and think, you know, I don't like them, and I'm not, you know, and your parents would say hello, and you would be thinking, I'm not saying hello to that person, you know. And so I think that it shows itself in children who it's there naturally. And I think as we grow up, we're taught to be more mentally focused. We're taught to interact with our feelings on a different level. So it's more mood based. So if we're tired, we cry and we get upset, you know, probably as adults as well as children. So we're kind of taught to interact with our feelings more on a mental, emotional level. And so we start to move away from that natural intuitive ability. But as I say, some people are more naturally intuitive, so it doesn't necessarily go away, but it may be dormant, or it may sort of subside, or we tend to ignore it. We train ourselves to ignore those intuitive instincts. And sometimes with people where it's a strong intuitive ability, it tends to bubble up or resurface in the teenage years. And it's usually when we're going through those changes as a teenager, those hormonal changes. So there can be a lot going on, and it can connect in with our intuitive abilities also bubbling up. And sometimes when people have something quite dramatic happen in their life, like a near-death experience, or they have even just a serious car accident, or any other kind of traumatic experiences, they this can rise up that intuitive ability as well. And it's usually the soul wanting to remind you that there's more to you than just your physical mental self. And so a lot of people tend to seek out answers once these things happen in their life, and they may go to different religions, they may go searching for answers, they may go to a medium or a psychic. They, you know, they could, there's lots of different ways, but one way or another, the soul, that intuition, tries to guide them, tries to lead them to seek out their truth. And I think that's quite an important phrase right there, to seek out their truth, to seek out your truth, because there's lots of different paths. And I read a book by J.J. Morse called Practical Occultism. It was written in the late 1800s, but it's still relevant today. And one of the sentences in there was, "There is no royal road." And the sort of bigger meaning around that in the book is that it really doesn't matter what path you take, it's your path. It's not somebody else's path, and that path is right for you at that time, until such a time as you decide to change direction. So it doesn't matter how privileged you are, what kind of a background you come from, whether it be privileged or filled with love or not. At the end of the day, your path is your path, and there's no royal road to seeking your spiritual truth or your truth in life. So it's the same with exploring your spirituality and your intuitive ability, whether it is small or great inside you, and perhaps whether it leads you to discover that actually you have more than just an intuitive ability, and there's perhaps a mediumistic ability. So as usual, I tend to wander off when you ask me questions, and I hope I'm in some way answering what you're asking. But yes, I do believe everybody has an intuitive instinct. It's just whether you've suppressed that through the teachings in life, or whether it's so naturally inherent in you, it's bubbled up and keeps sort of reminding you, hey, I'm here, listen to me. I think you asked, how do we listen? And I think a good example is, for example, if you go into a house, you're looking to rent a house or buy a house or something like that, you might walk in and it might be a brand new build. Nobody might have lived there at all. So it's all very new. The layout might be perfect. It might tick all the boxes you're looking for. You might walk around and say, yep, this ticks all the boxes of all the things I'm looking for. The location's fantastic, but there's just something I don't like about it and I can't quite put my finger on it. That's your intuition. And that's your gut instinct. So go with it. Usually there's a reason, and sometimes you won't always know what the reason is until things play out. Another one is when you meet people on a psychological level. You know, you're told when you go for job interviews, people make their mind up in the first 3 seconds and all that wonderful type of stuff. So it's not just about the visual presentation. We have that intuitive instinct, and a lot of that 3-second in approach or decision making is based on that intuitive level, how that and how the energies are when they connect. So, and this goes back to the previous episode where we talked about vibration and energy, and so that's what it is. It connects. The intuition is working on vibration and energy.
Wow, Penny, lots to unpack here. And again, you've done it. You've answered like 5 of my questions in just one. So let's try and like take it one at a time. Yes, you might. So obviously there's like a lot of vocabulary around this, and there's like many different names for the same thing, as you mentioned in the beginning. And there are some people accepting of a certain terminology and some of others. But I want to talk to you about how we, in adulthood, we lose this connection to ourselves. And my question would be, how can we get it back? And then as a subset question to this one would be mother's intuition, because mothers are adults too, but somehow they have this like they manage to get those feelings back so they can be, protect their offsprings and everything. So could you dig a bit deeper into these two, please?
Okay, so I think as adults, how do we generally get back in tune with that intuition or with ourselves and what have you? I think really you have to find what works for you. So meditation can be good. Some people find meditation hard, but I think there's a couple of things to remember. One is, if you think meditation is having no thoughts at all, then you're approaching it in the wrong way. Meditation is about slowing down your overactive mind and slowing down that thought process. So by taking that time to sit and focus on your breath, play a little gentle music or a guided meditation. I mean, the internet's filled with stuff out there. Even white noise helps some people. So just finding what works for you. And remember, music and white noise and all those sorts of things are energy, they're vibrations, and it's just finding what harmonizes with you and within you that helps slow down those thoughts. And that then creates a little space and a little peace within. And when you start to slow down that overactive left brain and just let the right brain play, get imaginative, or even just not having to engage in the chatter of the mind, we start to feel more at peace, and we start to feel that balance coming between mind, body, soul. And then we can start to hear, if you like, or feel and tap into our natural intuitive abilities. So, and it can be really good to also, if you've got a problem, or sometimes just taking that bit of time out can help you problem solve. Like, you can just feel the answer come to you. So you start to harmonize the different aspects of who you are. And it can also be quite a healing thing, obviously, because if you sort of slow down all those runaway thoughts, and I don't know if you've ever paid attention to your own inner dialogue, but usually we're our worst critics. All of us, we're our own worst critics. We can be quite negative in that internal dialogue. And so by taking a bit of time out, we can slow down that and turn it around into more positive affirmations and thoughts and positive actions from that. If sitting down, meditating isn't your bag, try going for walks. Try just getting out into nature and just, sometimes going for walks really slows down your mind and allows you to just get that peace within as well. Same sort of effect. So that's my sort of what my tip 101 for how do you start to get more in tune with that intuition and also start to listen to it. A lot of us, you know, perhaps you meet someone, a work colleague, a friend's friend, you know, you go on a date although at the moment with lockdown you might not be doing those sorts of things. But let's say we're in the good old days before lockdown, you might go on and meet someone on the internet and go on a date. And there might be something that just sort of tells you, well, they look nice, they sound nice, but there's just something I can't put my finger on. And we tend to be optimistic and want to ignore that like feeling of there's something I can't put my finger on. We tend to push that aside. So if you have that, pay attention to it because there's a reason. And more often than not, if you listen to friends who perhaps go on these dates and things and they say, oh, it was this, was that, it was fine, but there was just something I can't quite put my finger on. And then it gets further down the line and it turns out it wasn't the best connection. So it's subtle, but it's there. And I think that's what's important to remember. Listen to that subtle feeling and put it into practice and see how your experiences change. So when it comes to mother's intuition, I think mothers tend to have that connection to their children because obviously they carry the children in the womb. And so there's that energetic connection through that whole birth process. And the poor fathers don't have that as strong a connection, although I do think that men nowadays are a lot more wanting to be a lot more involved in the pregnancy process and, try to connect and do their best to be more involved in that way. So I think there are men out there that probably have dad's intuition as well. So I don't want to exclude dads from the mother's intuition, because I think it should be parents' intuition really nowadays. But I do think it's to do with that that love connection and that sort of being you in that. Perhaps in that pregnancy process, there's a lot of mental, emotional, and physical connection. And that's energy and that builds up. And so what tends, excuse me, what tends to happen is mothers have that natural connection, but I think fathers are starting to as well, that when the children are born, there's that vibrational connection. And, there's lots of different ways in which parents can have that intuitive connections. Aside from the feeling, there can be precognitive dreams. There can be just a knowing something's not right. All kinds of things. So, and parents tend not to dismiss those feelings, because I think probably through the child growing up, it gets put into practice a lot more, and then they start to listen to it. So it might not be a conscious thing, but a subconscious thing that they start to pay attention to a lot more, and they get proved right more often that if they listen to that, there is a reason. And whereas perhaps other people who may not have that parent-child connection, it's a lot easier to suppress those feelings and not put them into practice. So I hope that answers what you was.
Yeah, I think it does. Tying intuition in with what we were talking in our other dialogues about energy and intentions.
Mm.
How do we get? How do we go about getting better at listening to our intentions and what we set ourselves to do? Because sometimes I feel there's like this. I don't know how to call it. There's like this space, this distance between what we feel we should do and what our mind tells us to do. So how do we get better at syncing those two and making sure we're in alignment with ourselves, and listen to ourselves basically?
Mm. Well, I would say that in the mental space, we tend to the mental tends to be more connected to the physical in the set and the material world, materialistic things. I want this, I want that. I want to win the lottery. I think everybody wants to win the lottery. You know? And there's really only a very finite percentage that do on a logical level, but hey, we still keep going at it. And so I think that part of it is mentally we focus on what we want or we focus on what we don't have. So we tend to focus on, well, I've got a small house, but I want a bigger house. So, or I want an Audi, not a Volkswagen. You know, so we tend to focus on what we don't have. And part of the intention setting and part of that working towards what we do want to bring into our lives is about focusing on the positives, what we do have, and what we would like to bring towards us. So, you know, being grateful for having a Volkswagen, for example, and being really delighted with that, and knowing that you would like to aspire to the Audi, for example. So how are you going to do that is to bring more work towards you, or which brings you more money, which then allows you to afford the Audi. So so it's focusing on the things that you would like to bring towards you in a more positive way rather than what you don't have. Focus on what you would like to bring towards you. But I think as well, people tend to focus on the material side of things. And I have used an example of a materialistic item like a car. I think the most successful results I've found is when it has been focusing on a greater good is the way I want to put it. So I used an example in our previous dialogue about I really want to be in a job that makes me happy and gives me enough money to give me what I need. So it's not sort of saying I want this type of car, I want this type of house, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's just saying I just really want to be happy and I want to have enough money to be happy, you know, and then being grateful for what you do have. There's a lot of people that don't have a house, that don't have a car, that can't afford meals. So, hey, let's just be really happy with all the things we do have, as simple as they may be.
Yes, indeed. So what if we do all that, and it goes wrong? What do we do? Can it go wrong? Is there like a worst case scenario and a correction of the course if things don't turn out? If we basically set our intentions wrong, right? Because we were talking the other day about this, the huge weight that words carry, and sometimes we might not know how to use them properly. So what if we mess up? What then?
Well, you know, every day life brings a lesson to us, right? And, you know, there's a saying, you learn something new every day, which is pretty true. But every day you have a life lesson, you know, whether it's something repeated or something new or different in some way. And so, look, I would say that I don't think it can go wrong unless it's, as you've just said, look at the words that you're using. Look, are you focusing on materialistic things, and are you focusing on what you don't have? Because if you are, then you're always going to be in the negative, and you're not going to bring towards you ultimately what you want. So I talked yesterday about contemplation, and that being a really important process. And through that contemplation, you can probably boil down what you really need and the right kind of words to put into that manifestation, into that intention, into using your intuition, So my intuition led me to sort of look more into the energy of the moon phases, and the energy of words, the way in which I construct those words. So, I don't think life and these sorts of things are a one size fits all, because we are all unique and we have to find what works for us. There are things people talk about and use vision boards a lot nowadays. Like that's sort of an acceptable thing to do for people who don't believe in spiritual stuff, but it's just a different way of manifesting, a different way of setting your intentions, a different way. It's a visual way to but vision boards do tend to focus on materialistic items. So maybe there are some people out there that don't focus on materialistic items in their vision boards, but I would ask everybody out there that has a vision board to look at it and see how many items on there, or how many things are materialistic and how many are about a greater good.
Ooh, that's going to be an interesting exercise. Okay, let's end on a positive note.
Okay, so I can feel you looking at me like I need to turn this around somehow or something.
Yes.
But I think that look, let's remember we're not just, there's not just the mental aspect to ourselves, there's a physical aspect to ourselves, and there's the spiritual aspect to ourselves. And whatever spirituality works for you, that's wonderful. And I wish you all the success with that journey. And but let's remember, in our spiritual aspect, it's an unfolding process. And usually spirituality asks us to look within. It asks us to look at how we can be better souls, better people. And that therefore helps our mental process, and that therefore helps our physical / material world. So if you were feeling good on the inside, it resonates out. And if you feel good and grateful for all that you have, and then that will resonate out and bring more things that you would like to have in your world. And then like attracts like. So I would say be grateful, and you will find a more positive energy towards all the things, including material items.
Thank you, Penny. And thank you, folks, for listening. That's all from us today. Have a good one.
Bye for now.
Bye.